Museum is a place where time does not matter. Looking at the artifacts, we are experiencing the most vivid and exciting moments of history. The program Secrets of Museums on Kazakh TV channel. Applied Arts of Kazakhstan. The legacy of the past epochs and thread that links generations. The Museum of a Master and Researcher of Folk Crafts, Dynasty Shokparov. Traditional applied arts are not just a legacy of past eras, but an important part of people's culture, which has a great potential for spiritual development. Passed from generation to generation, it shapes people's aesthetic perception of the world. If your ancestors were folk craftsmen, then this, as duty, obliges you to follow in their footsteps, Joly Shokparov says. He descended from a renowned family of a jeweler, wood engraver, metal and leather artist, as well as the director of the Museum of Applied Arts. This unique museum is located in Akshay village, 70 kilometers away from the Almaty city. More than 2,000 exhibits, pieces of applied art of the Kazakh people, are preserved in the museum. In addition to the exhibition halls, there is a workshop in the museum where products are made to order. Despite the modern times, ancient technologies are used here. Even the tools used by the master have been miraculously preserved from past epoch till present, but most of them are created copies of old tools of trade. The Museum of Applied Arts was opened in honor of Joly's father, a famous and respected jeweler, Dynasty Shokparov. But this history began several generations ago. It is the history of the founder of the family name, a famous jeweler, Shokparov's grandfather. Brides wore his silver jewelry on their wedding days. In the old days, when wealthy people were going to give their daughters in marriage, they invited my grandfather to work for a summer period, and he made a dowry for all brides. For his work, he was paid livestock, horses, cows, sheep, and their amount was stipulated in advance. Shokparov's grandfather was a very famous master across Jatasu. There was lack of blacksmiths in kolkhoz at that time, and my grandfather went to work in the smithy to repair collective farm machinery. The spirit of the patron of the craftsmen in whom the Kazakh masters believe sacredly did not leave the Shokparov family. Genetic memory from Shokparov's grandfather passed to his son Dynasty, who was destined to become not only a famous jeweler, but also a researcher of folk crafts. When my father Dynasty turned 13 years old, his father Shokpar died. My uncle Ahmed took care of my father. As Ahmed was the brother of my grandfather, he used to visit his workshop for a long time and learned a lot. Graduating the 8th grade, my father entered Almaty Art School named after Nikolai Vasilyevich Gogol. At that time, there were no departments of applied arts, and he had to enter the book design department. And when the time for graduation was approaching, my father went to the school director and asked him for permission to defend the thesis not in the book design, but in applied art. At that time, the school director was Akbar Zhubanov, a well-known artist in Kazakhstan working in the field of applied arts. He always supported initiatives to promote national culture and gave his consent. Darkimbai Shokparov finished his thesis. He presented a set of dishes for kumis from wood and leather. He defended the thesis perfectly well. After that, he dedicated his entire life to the study and development of the applied art of the Kazakh people. After graduating from the art school, Darkimbai Shokparov set a goal. He intended to show the whole world an elegant craft of Kazakhs, about which was little known at that time. He traveled across the country and, talking to old masters, wrote down the secrets of their craft. He always had a notebook with him, in which he wrote down various technological tricks and secrets. Handicrafts that were once disappeared were revived. According to the records, Darkimbai recreated samples of folk art. It was he who brought back to life many of the exhibits of the Museum of Folk Musical Instruments, for which he was awarded with state awards. My father began to publish his research papers. The museum stores more than 200 articles. When there were many printed materials, Darkimbai published books. In addition to his own works, a collection of applied art pieces of the 19th century is kept in the museum named after Darkimbai Shokparov. These rarities were collected during expeditions across Kazakhstan. Today, Darkimbai's son Daulet Shokparov continues the work of the dynasty to preserve national crafts. When I was little, I often went to the workshop where my father worked. I helped him with cleaning. I worked as an apprentice. I gave him various tools, did easy jobs, which he sometimes instructed me to do. Already in the lower grades, I knew that I would also follow in his footsteps and become a master of applied art. The technology of the Kazakh applied skill differs from that of other ethnoses. The craft was not divided into forms. The master had to be able to do everything: forging, cutting, stitching, and patterning. In former times, jewelers were not divided into masters for metal, wood, or leather. They had to be able to work with all materials. After all, to make a saddle, for instance, one had to be a master of all trades. To be able to work with leather, wood, metal, and even with precious metals, they had to know everything. The culture of applied arts originated in a nomadic way of life. Workshops and tools had to be light and mobile. Forging, casting, processing, and painting, everything had to be made in step conditions in the nomad way of life. That is why all pieces were strong and served for centuries. Karagach tree grows in the territory of Kazakhstan. The European name for this is elm. Wood from Karagach was very popular thanks to its strength, elasticity, and beautiful texture. The sculpture by Darkimbai Shokparov depicting the people's hero Karasai Batyr is also made of Karagach tree. As for metals, Kazakhs preferred silver, copper, and brass. Silver was used in producing jewelry. Fragile gold wasn't used for a long time in the steppe conditions. To this day, the Kazakh girls wear silver pieces, comparing its shine with the brightness of the moon. Working with metal, it was necessary to know how acids and alkali were applied. The masters didn't only use chemicals, but also knew how to extract them from the steppe resources. European explorers in their works often describe the crafts of Kazakhs. Here is a record from the diaries of the German scientist Peter Pallas. For their crafts, the Kazakh people use saltpeter, copperas, sulfur, and sal ammoniac. In the steppe rocks, there are much saltpeter. Natural sal ammoniac can be found in Turkestan mountains, and combustible sulfur lies along the rivers. The steppe people do not have convenient workshops for the craft, but everything they create is distinguished by special exquisiteness and strength. For a home use, they do not need goods of foreign make. They use only products of own cattle breeding. The sacred duty of the masters, apart from the craft, was to educate people and pass their knowledge. Darkimbai Shokparov also taught people. His son Daulet also dedicated his life to teaching people. Young people come to him from everywhere, someone from distant places, someone from neighboring villages. Jewelers believe that God blessed someone with talent not for individual use. Knowledge and skills must be transferred to others. Only then a master will have energy for creativity and life. The mastery which I learned from my father as well as from other jewelers is the fortune of all people. It does not belong to me alone. I have to pass down my knowledge through the generations. I do not do this and hide my professional secrets. This will be considered a great sin. The process of training a student can last from several months to several years, depending on the type of craft. Daulet is happy if he sees that a student wants not only take over experience but also get full knowledge of the history, culture, and applied art of Kazakhstan. The continuity of generations among jewelers is also very important. One of the descendants of the master must necessarily inherit the work of his ancestor. Otherwise, his family will suffer all misfortunes and illnesses. There are still legends and stories proving this. Most often, they sound like this. Once a young boy became ill. He became fearful, sickly, and cried at night for no reason. No medicine could help this child, neither sedatives nor herbal brew. Numerous surveys did not help him make a diagnosis. Then someone of the distant relatives or from old men of the village remembered that one of the ancestors of the boy was a famous jeweler. To confirm this, the child's mother found in the barn old instruments of her great-grandfather. She decided to put them closer to the bed of her son so that they served him as an amulet. After that, the boy got better. He became active and cheerful as before. Over time, the boy was sent to the workshop of a local jeweler, where he began to master the folk craft. And the tool of his ancestor is kept in the house like a family relic.
Вот у нас в нашем музее хранится до сих пор наковальная.
An anvil of Shokpar's grandfather is still kept in our museum. This is his only tool that has reached present days. All the others were somehow missed, and some tools were given to other masters.
Единственный инструмент, который
The memory of my grandfather is this anvil.
осталось у нас.
Cackets, chests, saddles, leather vessels, for milk drinks, military armor, all this has demand in the domestic market nowadays. Of course, Kazakhs do not use these products in everyday life, but they present them to each other on solemn cases. Folk musical instruments, such as dombra, are found in almost every Kazakh house. Pieces of folk crafts are expensive. For example, a good set of leather vessels can cost half of the average monthly salary. A saddle can be valued at a price of a used car. It takes about a year to produce the saddle. Dowlet Shokparov sells his works at fairs and festivals, and often exports them to near and far abroad: Russia, Turkey, the United Arab Emirates, South Korea, Iran, Israel. There were times when the craft did not bring jewelers benefit. For example, in the 90s of the last century, people had to think not about traditional items but about daily bread. But the Shokparovs did not give up. They were engaged in everything, even repaired collective farm utensils. Darkimbai Shokparov dreamed to have a center for development of folk arts in his native village. A museum, workshops, a school of applied creativity. His dream was realized, but finally, only after his death.
В 2006 году, в мае месяце,
In 2006, in May, my father passed away.
ему тоже хотелось прийти.
We were told that the village governor wants to come in 40 days after my father's death to express his condolences.
Немножко подготовился, выставил.
I certainly prepared. I wanted to show my father's best works. I exhibited all the pieces, brought them to the proper view, and when the governor arrived, I arranged an excursion for him.
Экспонаты, которые сейчас стоят в музее.
I showed him almost everything that is now in the museum and told him my father's wish to open a museum of applied art in the Akshay village. It would be good if you help, I added. He replied, well, I'll help.
Ну хорошо, мы с ним договорились, потом он уехал.
The governor went away. Autumn has come, but there were no news, and I went to work in Almaty.
Пришлось идти на работу. Ну, подумал, может, ему некогда или кое-какие.
I decided that the governor had no time. He was supposedly to have a lot of work. I began to forget about our agreement.
Месяца где-то я сижу уже на земле.
Already in December, when I worked as a teacher in Almaty, the phone rang. I was told that I must urgently come to my region because our museum should be opened in the near future.
Я говорю, зачем? Вот ваш музей уже должен открываться на следующий год. Вы должны приехать, там кое-какие документы.
There I had to look through and sign many documents. As soon as classes were over, I got into the car and drove home. It turned out that by this time the governor's office did a great job on opening the museum. All authorizing and accompanying documents were arranged. I was instructed the order of the regional governor to arrange the museum.
Сейчас наш музей вот уже на гособеспечении.
Presently, our museum was supported by the state. Each year, a certain amount is allocated for its maintenance and development, and I should not only manage finances, but also completely run, recruit a team, be aware of everything. I used to be just a master, and now I'm doing administrative work. After all, someone had to do it. I have never faced such a job before. It was even a little scary.
Чувство у меня.
But I gradually mastered this work. I've been working for 10 years creating a museum. Everything can be learned, everything is given with experience, and such work as well. The workshop is functioning well. Most of the products are sold to museums that open across the country. The art of Darkimbai Shokparov is pursued, it gives its fruits. Times change. Pieces of folk crafts become museum exhibits, but this does not mean that they lose their significance for the people. Applied art is revived. It has acquired a sacred meaning. It reflects our spiritual connection with our ancestors, what we call the code of the nation.